Let's record this. Okay. Hello, everyone. Erev Tov, good evening. I hope you're all safe and healthy. Today is the 20th of Iyar. It's actually a very significant day on the Jewish calendar. I think you could come to me any day of the year and I'll explain to you why this is the holiest and the most important day. Today's date, the 20th of Iyar, is mentioned in the Torah after the Jews received the Torah in the year 2448 of creation. They actually hung out at Mount Sinai, and they did a big sin called the Golden Calf. They did Teshuvah on that sin. It was called Yom Kippur. They started building the Holy Sanctuary. It's called the Mishkan. And they spent the next 11 and a half months figuring themselves out, shutting off the slave mentality, learning how to be a people, learning how to get along with each other, learning how to honor a leader, learning how to honor each other. They were doing that all during that time, obviously with the Torah guiding them and God guiding them. So the 20th of Iyar, which was 11 months and 3 weeks later, after they received the Torah, the Ten Commandments, they started their trek in the wilderness. So today is when the journey began. Today is when the work in the wilderness started on the 20th of Iyar. So it's mentioned in the Torah in the book of Numbers. We'll actually be up to that Torah reading in a few weeks. Okay. Does anyone have anything to share or say before we begin the class, before we share the screen? Okay, I'd like to welcome my mother-in-law joining us all the way from beautiful San Diego. You're welcome to mute yourself, unmute yourself, however you feel more comfortable. If I hear noise or barking dogs coming from specifically one place, I'll just mute them, and obviously you could unmute yourself or chat a question at your convenience, and we'll begin the class.
You know, Rabbi, your mom joined us for Tea and Torah.
I know, I'm getting a little offended that she's joined.
I know. Just saying.
But just for the record, just in case, my mom is probably going to be watching this recording after.
Oh.
She's on the East Coast and we're on the West Coast, so 7:30.
Oh,
it's a little late for her. But you know what, Jolie? I think you're right. I should test it. I should give a daytime class.
Yeah.
If mom joins or not.
That's right.
Okay, and actually, just before we begin, in another class, I got so excited. I'm giving a Tanya class in the morning on Wednesday mornings, and we're learning chapter 12. But it has one of my favorite lines, my favorite all-time lines, comes from chapter 12 of Tanya, to the point where there's someone in our community. His name is Ian. He really, when this whole coronavirus and quarantine and shelter in place began, he just needed. He would call me and we would chat. I would call him, and he said, "Rabbi, you're infectious. You just make me feel good, and I need you to share your message, not only to me. I want you to share it." So I never do Facebook Lives, but in order to guilt me into doing Facebook Lives, Ian bought me an iPad, and he says, "Now you have no excuse. You've got to do it." So on the iPad, he engraved the words, "A little bit of light. This pushes away a lot of darkness."
Oh, wow. And
it's an incredible line. It's actually from Tanya, from this foundational book of authored by the first Chabad Rebbe in the late 1700s. And it's so relevant now to realize that there's even in the face of darkness, our job is to add just a little bit of light, which is a mitzvah, and our little bit will make all the difference, because ultimately we'll see the light will push away any darkness that we have. Anyway, that's my little inspiration for the week. But we have so much inspiration that will guide us this evening. We're going to be learning chapter 5. First of all, does it bother anyone that I shuckle? My little shaking? Is it hard to follow me when I go like this?
No, it makes me a little seasick.
It is, right? I think I'm getting dizzy just watching myself shuckle.
Should we all just kind of do it with you?
Yeah.
If we all have the same movement, when I go forward, you go back, it'll actually be a perfect wave. But you know what, I'll try to
synchronize.
Be a rowing team.
Okay, so I'll try to stay still. It might be hard. I'm just so used to shuckling, but I will pay extra attention. I think every now and then I go like this also with my yarmulke. I don't even realize I do it, and I go like this without realizing. But in my defense, the shuckling, as we call it, which is the Yiddish expression for shaking when you study or pray, it's so funny. My children do it now also, and I wonder where they got it from because I don't even realize that I do it. And they watch me do it, so they do it, and it's just become that's what they do now. But a few reasons of why we shuckle is number one is when we're studying Torah, it's our soul is illuminated. Our soul is on fire. I mean, our soul is always lit up. King Solomon refers our neshama to a flame, right? That's why when a person passes and on a yard site, we light a flame. A flame is like the neshama. And the neshama, if you look at a flame, the flame is always flickering. It's always trying to rise upward and leave the wick, but the wick is keeping it pulled down. So when you're learning that the soul is feeling a state of ecstasy, a state of inspiration, it's almost like the flickering of the flame. It's the shake of the neshama. And another small reason is when you're studying Torah, it's really just your mind, your eyes, your mouth, and your heart involved in prayer, in Torah study. When you shuckle, you're actually involving your entire body in the mitzvah of Torah study. I think that's some of the sources of what I am familiar with of why we shuckle, but I will try not to. We'll work hard at it. Okay, I'll share my screen, and we'll be learning chapter 5. There's so much in it. It's just a beautiful, Jolie, I don't know if you were able in the fancy book that you got to sneak a little bit in. Were you able to prepare a little bit before?
No, because did I know that we were doing chapter 5? I did not know.
I'm sorry. So every week, I'm sorry, I should make that clear also. Between Passover and Shavuot, there's 6 Shabbats in between Passover and Shavuot, which is coming up in the beginning of June. So during that 6-week process, during the 6-week period, we study the 6 chapters of Pirkei Avot, of the Ethics of the Fathers. So although we haven't been doing it correctly, meaning we're just skimming through as many missions as we can in a chapter, I am trying to honor the weekly chapter, and therefore this week would be chapter 5. And although the way I put it up originally is that this would be the last class in the series of Pirkei Avot, I do plan to give another one just because I'm enjoying it so much to study. It makes me study it a lot better when I discuss it and listen and glean insights and inspiration and information from you all, and we discuss it together. So next week would be chapter 6, so which is the last Shabbat before Shavuot. So we're going to give another. We're going to have another Thursday evening next week as well.
So now I have no excuse, Rabbi. I know it's chapter 6.
Awesome. So we'll begin chapter 5 now. I'll share my screen like I said I would. And okay, could everyone see my screen? Could everyone see this?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
And okay, so let's begin. I'm going to skip the first 2 just because there are so many I want to get into and a lot of relevant messages. Some of them, I don't want to jump the gun, but you'll in one of them, it'll be hard for you to figure out where. It's one of my hardest things to do as a community leader is side stuff. QuickBooks is not what I enjoy doing as a rabbi. I enjoy learning Torah with people. I enjoy meeting with people, listening to people. QuickBooks is one of the reasons why I do it, and I do it correctly, is because of chapter 5 of Pirkei Avot. So somehow we're going to have to find that connection, and we'll see that in one of the Mishnahs coming up. Okay, we'll begin with chapter 5, Mishnah 3. A lot of people don't know this, and I just thought it would be nice to start with Mishnah 3 about Abraham, the first Jew, our patriarch. Let's see. Shira, would you like to begin Mishnah 3?
Sure.
Go for it.
Can you unmute?
Would it be helpful if I zoom in a little more?
Yeah, thank you.
Perfect.
Wow. That's
Wow.
really
We can all see it now. Yeah.
I can see it at your house.
Exactly.
Okay, so our forefather Abraham was tested with 10 trials to see if he would remain faithful to God. and he passed them all. This shows how great the love of our forefather Abraham for God was.
Beautiful. So there was 10 tests. For those that don't, in the Torah, all 10 are not listed. So I'll just tell you what the 10 are. Some of them you may be familiar with, others you won't. The first one, most people don't know, and it's so incredible. Our leaders, Jolie, and I'm not sure who else is Adrian, if you're there, I'm not sure who else listens, is participating in Adina's Torah NT,
I'm here.
and Vivian as well. But I think you may have read that, I don't know if you read this when you were learning about Zipporah, that Moshe was like locked up for 10 years. Did you come across that in your study with Adina? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
In order to
So-
stay pure, to study away from Zipporah, is that what you mean?
Like he was locked up for 10 years, right? But maybe you didn't learn that midrash. I'm not sure if I know I
I
was
don't
discussing
think
with
he did.
Adina. I wasn't sure if she incorporated it in her study. But either way, according to one opinion, he was actually locked up for 10 years. It's not in the Torah, it's in the midrash. The only one that's clear in the Torah that he was locked up for an extended period of time is Joseph. Joseph was locked up in the prison in Egypt for 12 years. This is the great Joseph that my son is even named after, and he spent 12 years of his life in a dark dungeon of Egypt. And so it's interesting to know that Abraham, our forefather, spent 13 years locked up in a cave, hiding from the king Nimrod who wanted to kill him. So that was actually his first test as a child when he was starting to believe in God and wasn't allowed at the time. His first test was that he had to hide for 13 years. And he still came out strong in the faith, even though God never came to him yet. After he smashed his father's idols, his father was an idol in the idol business, and he smashed all his father's idols. And Nimrod took him and tried to throw him into a fiery furnace in front of the entire people. And he survived it miraculously. Shira, are you familiar with that one? I think we touched on that one, right? I think I see you're nodding your head, so I guess
Yes.
one of the hardest tests was at 75. His father, God came to him for the first time and told him, "Leave your land, leave your home, and take your wife, nephew, and go to a new land that I will show you." That became the land of Israel. But at the beginning, he had no idea where he was going. That's really hard to pack your bags and go to an airport without even knowing where you're heading.
That's
Another test.
sorry.
Okay.
Lech Lecha.
Lech lecha, exactly.
Yeah,
Go.
sorry.
Go to yourself. Exactly. Thank you, Shira. Another one was Sarah, his wife, was kidnapped by Pharaoh. And right before Sarah was kidnapped, he finally got to Israel after traveling for months. God told him, go to this land. He gets there, and what does he find out? That there's actually a famine, and there's no way he could survive there. And therefore God says, all right, go to Egypt. So even with that, he didn't doubt God. Even after God tells him, change the plans, you got to leave. Anyway, that's just 5 of them. The hardest of them all was actually the binding of Isaac, which was the 10th, which is when God told him to take his child, born to him at the age of 100, when he was 100, and to sacrifice him. Interesting to know that Isaac was a grown man. He was 37 years old at the time, not like the image that many people have that he was a baby or a boy, a toddler. But still, that would just need its own discussion. But that was definitely a test on Avram. So anyway, that's the 10 tests. Okay, we'll continue. That's some of the 10 tests, I should say. Shira, do you mind, unless this makes you dizzy just from scrolling, do you mind reading this footnote 4 on it?
Sure. Abraham passed 10 extremely difficult tests. Since he is our father, we inherit this ability to pass tests. When you feel that you are being tested, keep in mind that you are a descendant of Abraham, and he empowers you to succeed.
So thank you, Shira. That's beautiful. So it's in our DNA, just from who we are, that we have the power to overcome hardships. Every person is gifted this, but knowing that Avram did it already ahead of us, he paved the path to prove to us that we could do it too. That's beautiful. Thank you.
So he helped me out in school.
Nice, Shira. That's good. Okay, number 4. Thomas, you want to take over?
Sure. Number 4.
Yeah.
10 miracles were performed for our ancestors in Egypt to save them from each of the 10 plagues, and 10 miracles at the Sea of Reeds to save them from each of the 10 plagues that affected the Egyptians. The Holy One, blessed be He, brought 10 plagues upon the Egyptians in Egypt, and 10 at the Sea of Reeds. Our ancestors tested the patience of God, the Holy One. Blessed be He in the desert. I said dessert. In the desert with 10 tents. As God says in the Torah, they have tested me these 10 times and they have not listened to my voice.
I
I'm
have been
wondering-
tested with dessert as well.
The good Jewish way.
That's right.
That's good. So I think the connection between these things is they've seen in the span of a year 20 miracles, 10 in Egypt, 10 at the sea, all within a span of 11 months. They've seen 20 miracles, and yet what's their reaction to it all is questioning God. Right? 10 times they complained to God, and they didn't listen to God. God, like, what do you like? If in God's eyes or in God's shoes, I showed you all the miracles. Like, why are you not trusting in me? You know, and every opportunity, the Jews, they didn't see water, they complained. They wanted meat, they complained. They had the manna, they complained. They were complaining all the time, and it's just startling because the beginning of this Mishnah says they just had 20 miracles right ahead of them. So I think a lot of it is to realize the miracles that we have in our lives, and to at some point trust God that we will survive it, we will overcome it, God will guide us through it. Right? In Hebrew, it's called emunah and bitachon, which means faith and trust in God. And it's much easier to have that faith when you experience miracles. And as the Jews had miracles back then, I don't know if they were expected, but there's at some point, God's like, you could put a little bit of trust in me. Anyone have any comments to share? Yeah.
Sorry. Jews know how to kvetch.
We do. Yeah. Okay. Let's continue. Jolie, on my screen, you're next. Does everyone have the same order of videos, or is it different?
All different.
All different. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's all different. I'm right under you. I think the person whose screen it is right underneath the speaker.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. Are each of you underneath Rabbi Landa?
I'm above.
Oh, you're above. All right. So
Okay.
yeah, interesting. Okay. I don't know.
Only on the screen though.
Yeah. Only on the screen. Okay, so you want me to read 5?
Yeah, it's a nice long one. Go for it.
Oh, okay. 10 miracles were done for our ancestors in the Holy Temple. 1, no woman miscarried because of cravings caused by the smell of the roasting meat of the offerings. 2, the meat of the offerings never became rotten. 3, no fly was seen in the place where the offerings were cut up. 4, never did the high priest become impure on Yom Kippur. 5, the rains did not extinguish the fire of the woodpile on the altar. 6, the wind did not succeed in disrupting the neat column of smoke rising from the fire on the altar. 7, no disqualifying issues were ever found with the Omer offering on the second day of Pesach, with the 2 loaves offered on Shavuot, or with the showbread baked each week. 8, when the people in the Holy Temple stood, they were packed together, yet when they bowed, they had plenty of space. Interesting. 9, no snake or scorpion caused harm in Jerusalem. 10, no one said to his friend, the space is too crowded for me to stay overnight in Jerusalem.
Awesome. So there's so many things here. There's 10 things. As you can see, there's a pattern in this Mishnah. It's all like in numbers. So there's 10 miracles at the sea, 10 miracles in Egypt, 10 miracles that took place in the temple. If any of them stand out to you, please share them. I'll just zoom out a little bit so you can probably see all 10 at once.
One of the miracles is that they stopped fetching.
That's the last one. Is that Adrian speaking?
Yeah,
Thank you. That's a good one. That's the last one, right?
yeah.
Oh,
Space
well,
is too crowded for me to stay overnight. Yeah.
So, it's interesting. I'm seeing here a commentary that it goes the order of number 1, like how is this number 1 and how is that number 10? It goes in order of the greatness of a miracle. So number 1, that's actually, that's like the most severe of harm is a miscarriage, God forbid, to a woman. The least severe is just some uncomfortability of it being too crowded. And the point is that all throughout it all, there wasn't any harm caused. Meaning, in the time of the temple, we were on a spiritual high where, from the most harm, God forbid, a woman miscarrying, to the least harm, just some uncomfortability in a 5-star hotel. We didn't have any of those challenges. But I want to nitpick a little bit of each of them. So let's start with number one. What is a woman miscarrying about craving meat? Is the Jewish law is that even on Yom Kippur, if a pregnant woman craves food, kosher or not kosher, you must give it to them. Even if the doctor says she doesn't need it, she's fine. If she says she needs it, you give it to her. And there's no questioning it, because it could be harmful to her or harmful to the baby. And obviously it depends on her level of craving, but there's no holdbacks, because it's kosher or not kosher. If she's craving it, it could be harmful. So the meat of the temple, it was part of the offerings, were not eaten by people. These were the holy offerings that were consumed on the temple. So it never, even though it could have smelled good, it's a good barbecue. Live Ba'omer was on Tuesday, and we had a delicious barbecue. Adina made these amazing burgers, but it didn't tempt her and didn't cause any cravings. The reason is, and this is the part that I find so special, is that you would think, why wouldn't the Mishnah, let me just rephrase this. The Mishnah should have started with number 10, which was something that was helpful for everyone, right? The Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, that's a one-person job. The pregnant woman is a minority. How many pregnant women were there with all the men, women, and children there? And the one that's saying that it's not so crowded, or we were all able to bow in our own space, that's a more communal one. It's more universal. It's something we could all relate to. Pregnant women having cravings is not something I could relate to. So why would that be number one? That's not so meaningful. So something we learned from there is that it demonstrates that the point of these miracles, and part of the miracle, it wasn't meant only for the whole, for everyone, for the communal, and those are the great miracles. Every single one, every single person is an entity and an entirety of a world and a universe to themselves. And each person plays an incredible part. And no matter how small or big, they're not only worthy of a miracle, they should be listed first. And it's a reminder for us to be so careful with every single person, being that they are a world to themselves. Another one, I'm seeing here some beautiful commentaries. So actually there's a big fight about this. I just want to tell everyone. Number 6, I'm just going to skip to this one. You see number 6 where it says the wind did not succeed in disrupting the neat column of smoke. So the temple, there was an outdoor part of the temple. There was part of the temple that was indoor, where the Holy of Holies was. But a big part of the Holy Temple in Jerusalem on the Temple Mount was actually outdoors. So the altar, which in Hebrew is called the Mizbeach, was actually outside. It was under the sky. And there was a smoke that was always there. And this pillar of smoke, no matter what wind and climate came, which I'm pretty sure for those that have been to Israel and are familiar with our climate here, I'm pretty sure that Israel climate is similar to the Bay Area, meaning it's coldish in the winter and it's rainy, and it's like in the 40s and 50s, and it's nice and warm and not too humid in the summer. Anyone here who spent, I know my mother-in-law actually does, I'll ask my mother-in-law, does Tzfat get humid in the summer? It is humid, right? Oh, you know what, let me unmute you, hold on.
It's colder in the winter and warmer in the summer. Yeah.
But is there humidity? You remember?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so then I think it's a pretty similar climate to here. But my point is that there is definitely wind in the winter, and yet the pillar of smoke never went in any direction. So I just want to actually share with you a quick Mishnah from somewhere else. There was actually, the rabbis actually laid a curse in the times of the temple on a specific family. This family, they knew the recipe. There was a secret ingredient that their family knew that would keep the pillar of smoke strong in its pillar, and it wouldn't lean to the right or to the left. They didn't want to share this ingredient with anyone else. It was a family secret, and they didn't want anyone to know about it because then it wouldn't be special to them. It was someone else knows a secret, so they kept it in their family. Eventually, their family was wiped out during the time of the destruction, and no one knew the ingredient anymore. So during the time of the Second Temple, this didn't happen. That pillar of smoke staying straight was not present. It was only actually during the times of the First Temple, which is just interesting to know. Also, the challah that stayed fresh for an entire week. There was a specific family that knew the ingredient to keep it fresh. This is before putting in all these artificial things to keep it fresh. They didn't share it with anyone. Eventually got lost. But just a little bit of a deeper meaning. That's just some technicalities to this number 6. But just a little bit of a deeper meaning is the wind did not. Let me go back to number 5 for this one. The rains did not extinguish the fire of the woodpile on the altar. So this is a favorite of mine. Rains in Kabbalah, they actually use the idea of rains and raging water as worries and anxieties of people. Rain is actually usually a symbol of prosperity. In the olden days and now also, we need water to grow our produce. And in the olden days in Israel, it was an agricultural country. They relied on it. And if it was a drought year, if there was no rain, it was very dangerous for the people. So the rain was the symbol of blessing. But when you rely only on the rain and you shift your attention and prayers only for rain and not to God, that could be a dangerous thing. So raging waters and stormy rains is actually a symbol in Kabbalah of a person having stress and nervousness coming from business matters, which is obviously very relevant now. When so many of us, and I speak to people day and night, when people are worried, and rightfully so, 100%. But there's a beautiful verse in the Torah that says, Mayim Rabin, the great waters, the heavy waters, and the raging rivers, lo yuchlu lichbeis es Abba, can never extinguish the love of us to God. It's always going to be there, no matter how strong the pressures of business and money is. So I think a beautiful message from number 5 is there was raging rains going on in Israel and in our lives, but yet the fire remained burning. So even with all the problems and challenges, material concerns that we have, it doesn't ruin, it doesn't extinguish our engagement in our relationship with God, our passion and our fire. In Yiddish, we call it the bren, for our love for God. Yeah, Debbie, go ahead. You're able to mute yourself. Go ahead.
So did these 10 miracles just happen once, or did the same 10 miracles happen every year?
It seems like that's a good question. Just from the wording of it, it seems like it was constant, right? It says we're done for our ancestors in the Holy Temple. It seems like it wasn't a one-time occurrence. It seems like it was a constant. Because if it was just a one-time thing, it doesn't have that much enjoyment. It's something that the Jewish people were privy to. That's what I would say. If anyone else has another interpretation of it.
If we can see number 6, it looks like it refers to a more ongoing 10 miraculous things were created on Friday. So that looks like a more continuous thing on number 6. Maybe we could balance that against number 5 and see if this was continuous or if it was a one.
So yeah, number 6 definitely was a one-time thing. Because that were created. Sorry, missing mouse.
Number 6.
We're done. Let's see. Okay, that's a good idea. Let's go to number 6 and see. Just one more. I just have to tell you one more thing. This is a really cool one. And actually, my mother-in-law would resonate with this. When the people in the Holy Temple, number 8, when the people in the Holy Temple stood, they were packed together. Yet when they bowed, they had plenty of space. We're talking about millions of Jews. It's called a pilgrimage when we all went to Jerusalem from all across Israel, and we were packed. Like, the expression is like sardines. That's how the Hasidim felt in 770, which is Chabad headquarters, especially during the high holidays, when there were so many Hasidim that wanted to be present for the Rebbe to blow the shofar. And there is certain moments that you don't want to miss. You can't miss. And my mother-in-law was there, and my father-in-law shares how he remembers how he needed to itch himself, like on his back or something. But by the time he tried to get his arm back, it was too packed. His arm was stuck behind him for the rest of services because there was no way he could actually squeeze his arm that way. So something similar to that happened in the temple. But the miracle was that when it came time to bow, we don't bow now, and we don't bow to anyone. We only bow to God. Nowadays, we don't bow. In the temple times, they bowed and when they came to the temple for prayer, the Kohen Gadol would say God's holy name, and people would bow in the overwhelming experience of hearing God's name. And nowadays, we don't even pronounce that name of God. And if anyone is familiar with the last 4 words of Aleinu, it's everyone's favorite words of prayer because it's the last 4 words of prayer. When we say Bayom Hahu, Yeh, we say Hashem Echad Ushmo Echad. On that day, when Mashiach will come and we'll be back in the temple, God will be one and His name will be one, which means He will be called by His real name. Now we don't actually call God by the full name of God, but in the temple times, they did. So when they would say God's name, they would prostrate themselves. But the miracle was, when they would bow, they all had enough space. And one of the beauties of this, that they had enough space, is that when they would bow, it was actually a time of confession. It was a time of teshuvah. They would actually speak their prayer to God on what they know they have to correct themselves, what they know they have to ameliorate themselves in. So for that, it's uncomfortable if you're hearing all the dark stuff that I did this past year when I'm standing there on Yom Kippur. So it could be uncomfortable. I could gloss it over. I could ignore half of it. So the miracle was that everyone had their space. Everyone had their room that they could vent, that they could, speak to God openly and not feel that they're listening in to being listened in from another person. Does that make sense? I hope I explained that enough. Okay, now Mishnah 6. Unless anyone have any comments on Mishnah 5 to add.
No, yeah, I see on 6. It's because it said on Friday, and then I realized that it's at the end of the 6th day of creation, and
Exactly. Right.
It's different. So that's a one-time thing. But it looks like if the other one's number 5, I mean, I can't really. I haven't studied enough, but it looks like in context of the other miracles, this is all about creation. I can't say about number 5 that it happens continuously or if it was once. Everything else seems to be once, the pattern in this particular chapter.
Uh-huh.
So Rabbi,
I'm going on a hunch that it's, I know, what, I'll tell you why. Number 7 will prove it to me.
Oh, all right.
And it's good that we're thinking about it because I never, I never thought of, where I would find the answer to it. But number 7 about this Omer, which we're actually now in the midst of counting the Omer. The counting of the Omer, which is what we do now, actually followed a very important process in the temple on the 2nd day of Passover, before starting the counting of the Omer, 49 days till Shavuot, which we're currently in the middle of. They would actually do the offering of the Omer. They would take barley, they would go to the fields, collect barley, and actually celebrate the barley Omer offering to God. Only once they did that, did they start counting 49 days. But the barley offering, this Omer offering, was a must. It needed to happen. So if there was ever a disqualifying issue in the Omer, it would cause major problems. Like they wouldn't be able to cut any other produce or crop for a long time. So that couldn't be a one-time miracle. That needed to happen every year, that miracle. And I would actually say the same thing is every time, because the fact is, like, take number 10 also. If snakes didn't harm people once, take number 9. If snakes only harmed other years and not one year, that's not such a miracle. The miracle is that it was a constant thing. And number 10, if I went to a hotel, had a nice experience once, but then I go back another 3 years and didn't have a good experience, I'm not going back there. So if people didn't fetch one year, but then fetch other years, something's missing from that miracle. The miracle is, I'm pretty sure, a common, constant miracle. That would be my bottom line. All right.
I defer to your bottom line, Rabbi.
Okay, thank you. let's see, number 6 is a really nice one. So we know this is stunning because everything was created in the 6 days of creation. That's why it's called 6 days of creation. Besides for these 10 things were actually created right after, like, I guess technically maybe it's still called the 6 days of creation, but it was created after Adam was created. Usually we say Adam was the last to be created because Adam was the most important part of creation. Adam and Eve it's like a birthday boy or a birthday girl coming to their birthday party. They're the last one to show up because they're the star of the show. So Adam and Eve, they were the whole purpose of creation. So everything got ready. God put all the props in place, all the animals and trees and water and birds and etc. And then it was ready for humanity. But these 10 things were actually created after. These were other things. We'll see what they are, and then we'll have to analyze and nitpick at some of them and why these things couldn't be created regularly. Let's see, on my screen, Debbie, you're, Jolie, you just read, right? So Debbie, go for it. I'm gonna zoom in a little more, Debbie, if that's okay. Just okay, could you see?
Yeah.
Awesome, go.
6.
Yeah.
10 miraculous things were created on Friday at twilight at the end of the 6th day of creation. They are, number 1, the opening of the earth that swallowed Korah and his followers. 2, the opening of the well. So that only happened once. 2, the opening of the well that provided water for the Jewish nation in the desert. 3, the mouth of Balaam's talking donkey. 4, the rainbow that appeared after the flood. 5, the manna that the Jewish nation ate in the desert. 6, the stick that Moses used to perform miracles. 7, the shamir worm that cut the stones used to build the holy temple. 8, the written shape of the letters of the Hebrew alphabet. 9, the engraved writing of the tablets. 10, the first tablets. Some say that the grave of Moses and the ram that our forefather Abraham offered at the binding of Isaac instead of Isaac were also created then. And some say that the destruction spirits were also created then, and even the first tongues. Because tongues are needed to make other tongues, God created the first pair, enabling man to create more.
Okay, so I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see all 10 or 13, I think, all together here. And if it's okay with everyone, I'll give everyone 30 seconds. I would love to hear your feedback on what is, you would say, the most important of items being created over here, and what is the least important, what is the most irrelevant, and yet still being created. I think you can see all 10 now. I would love anyone's feedback, so we'll give like 20 seconds for people to think, review them, and I would love to hear some of what you guys have to share on it.
I think the most was the alphabet.
Is this Adrian? The most
Yeah.
was the alphabet?
Yeah.
So that's an interesting one because the Hebrew letters were there already before, right? The God spoke. The first words God says was Yehi Or. God spoke Lashon HaKodesh, the holy tongue. God spoke Hebrew. So already from Sunday, the language was there. God, it says Adam, he named on Friday, he named all of creation. It says the horse went in front of him, the ox went in front of him. He got a name. He named Chava, his wife Eve. So the Hebrew language was there. They were communicating already in Hebrew, right? When God came and says, why did you eat from the tree? Where are you? Right? That was the conversation that they had, the Torah talks about. But the shapes were not created yet. That the Aleph is shaped like that and the Bet was shaped like that. It would seem almost who cares? And yet, I think I shared this in the summer when I gave a Hebrew reading course, that in Hebrew, not only the language is holy, the shape of the language was created by God. Then there's a reason I gave some minor examples. An Aleph is actually a Vav with 2 Yuds on either side of it. And you may want to close your eyes because I'm just going to zoom in to an Aleph just so you could see. If I'm zooming in over here, can everyone see this Aleph over here?
Mm-hmm.
As an example, so there's actually a Vav over there. And on either side, that's a Yud, and that's an upside down Yud. So there's a significance of why this Yud is representing God. This Yud is representing us. And we know we're called a Yid, right? We're called a Yid is the word, a Yehudi, which starts with a Yud. God's name starts with a Yud. And the Vav in middle is that attachment, that connection between us and God. So my point over here is just giving you one letter, but every letter has a Kabbalistic meaning of why that's the shape of the letter, which you don't have that in any language, of why this B looks like a B and not a P. I mean, it's just a way of communicating. But in Hebrew, every letter was actually created with meaning, and it was created on Friday by twilight. Any other significance or least?
I was thinking that if you needed the shape to have writing, you needed the writing to have the Torah as a written book.
Oh, like even the one where we quoted the tablets, right? I think the tablets were created on number 10 was the first tablets.
Yeah.
So that would need the Hebrew letter shapes. You're saying one was needed.
Yeah.
The other.
I was saying the engraved writing.
Yeah, that's very good. Thank you.
What about the rainbow?
What about it? What do you think?
Well, I think the rainbow is really important because isn't that God's promise that will keep going on?
It is. So, but what I'm curious is, why was it necessary to be created then? It was only needed, right? Noah's flood happened 1,500 years later. So why God couldn't just save it for, later? But it seems, I think you have a good point, Naomi, where everything needed to be created during these 6 days. Some things were saved for later, including that rainbow. So the significance of the rainbow, you're right, Naomi, is so relevant and important because it's symbolizing God's forgiveness in the world, which is what happened by the flood. But you're right. So that had to be created during the 6 days. It was more of a supernatural thing. It wasn't needed yet. And therefore, it wasn't created before Adam. It was only created after. Yeah, good one. So I'll tell you my favorite, and everyone else. My favorite is actually the last one that Debbie mentioned, which is about the tongues. It seems so like after talking about Moses' grave and the manna, the stick, the staff that Moshe used, it talks about tongues. Yeah, do you know what tongues are? Like those metal things that you hold like something hot over a fire. That's tongues, and that's in the Mishnah, created by God. So it's a very interesting one, and this is where I preface. It's actually my favorite one. When I do QuickBooks, and I just had to do it today. I don't know if you're able to see my full screen, but I actually have it open on the bottom of my screen. I don't know if you're on your screen you can see it, but my QuickBooks is open, and I do QuickBooks because of this Mishnah. So I have to do QuickBooks because of the IRS and because of donors that want to see my books for sure. But I also do QuickBooks because it's part of a mitzvah. And what I mean by that, did I get stuck for a second? Can everyone hear me?
No, you're live.
Okay, good. Sorry about that. Okay. So let me just explain about this tongues. A person may think, only when do I have meaning is when I'm actually doing a mitzvah. It feels good. When I'm making Kiddush on Friday night, there's something so beautiful there. When I'm putting on tefillin with someone in Dr. Insomniacs, it's so nice. I feel good. But then there's other parts that it's not that meaningful. I'll give you an example. When a bris, I had a Jeopardy, which actually my mother-in-law and my father-in-law were one of the champions of one of the rounds of Jeopardy. One of the questions was, what's the most observed rituals in Judaism? And the answer was the bris circumcision. So it's a very meaningful thing. You're bringing the child. Oh, you can't hear me?
No, you're breaking.
Oh.
I couldn't understand the last things you said.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me try that again. Jolie, I think, was it how many months ago did you have a bris in your family? 9 in the summer?
Oh, maybe ago, something like that. Maybe. I don't know if it was that long. So maybe not.
Okay. So at a bris is a meaningful thing. So what's the beauty of the bris is actually the ceremony. But there's a lot that goes in for the Moel to prepare and practice, train himself to get a knife. He has to sharpen it. There's a lot of processes before. Let's say Shabbos is beautiful, but cooking for Shabbos or preparing for Passover, not for every person is it that exciting. I have to make the bread and make the chicken. So one of the beauty of this message about the tongs is that even something that's just preparing for something else is so important, and it's actually part of a mitzvah. The fact is, for tongs to be created, the blacksmith, is that a blacksmith or a silversmith? They need another pair of tongs to hold the tongs in the fire, right? To make tongs, you need to heat it up, metal, mold it. But in order to have the first pair, in order to make a pair of tongs, you need a pair of tongs to hold it with. So who created the first pair of tongs? That had to happen from Hashem. There was no other way for us to be able to make tongs.
It sounds like the chicken and the egg.
Right. So the first pair of tongs was created by God. And why that's so meaningful in this Mishnah is it's reminding us that it's not only when I'm involved in an actual important mitzvah, the tongs are in the fire and it's melting, that's when it's so meaningful. Even something that has to prepare for it, it's just as part of the mitzvah. So chopping wood in order to make a fire that I'm going to be able to warm up my food for Shabbos in the olden days, or preparing the knife ahead of time for the bris, that's part of the mitzvah. Or in my community, in our community, every day is a mitzvah in helping others and inspiring each other, but having my books in order is actually part of it. So a lot of times I don't feel it. Like the mitzvah is when we're together in shul, when we're singing Ne'ilah, the concluding prayer of Yom Kippur, when we're sounding the shofar, when we're learning Torah. These are the meaningful mitzvahs. But then there's other parts of making sure our community and our growth is growing, and that's QuickBooks. So for me, it's just a very personal thing. The QuickBooks is not inspiring to me, but I'm inspired to do it because it's actually part of the mitzvah of doing the right thing. And we all have those parts of our life where it's not as meaningful, but it's part of growing in my well-being and my spiritual growth, my mitzvahs, and even those parts that don't seem so meaningful is part of the mitzvah itself. That's what the message I learned from Tans. And there's a footnote too. Let me see if that's what he would say over here. Let's see. Let's just read that footnote too. The first tongs were not created to be used as tongs. They were created to make other tongs. Even though they were only a preparation for something else, they were created along with the other important items to stress that the preparations for a commandment should be as important as the commandment itself. Anyway, I like that one. Another one that I find relevant is the shamir. Has anyone heard of the shamir worm before? Is that something anyone is familiar with?
No.
So let me just quote it then. I'm sorry, I scrolled too far down. Shamir worm, what number? If anyone sees it before me.
One of the miracles.
Yeah, which number was it? Here we go, number 7. The shamir worm that cut the stones used to build the holy temple. So there was this really cool worm that needed to be used for the building of the temple. Did anyone see those beautiful temples at the Western Wall? How perfectly cut they are?
Mm-hmm.
They were actually not even cut with a proper stone cutter. They were cut with a worm. There was this miraculous worm that was created on Friday by twilight. And this worm is what Solomon used to build the temple. Now, the reason why there's a law in the Torah, it's a biblical law, that metal is not allowed to be used in the temple. There was no metal to be used to cut the stones for the altar or for the other parts of the temple. In fact, there's even a custom. My mother is actually very specific with this custom. I don't know if it's a Sephardic thing, but tell me if anyone grew up with this thing. When we do a prayer at the table in my mother's house growing up, there were no knives allowed on the table.
Wow.
And maybe it's a Sephardic thing. And it comes from this source where the altar, there was no metal allowed on the altar. And the reason is because metal was used to kill. It was used as a sword. The altar was a place of peace, a place of holiness.
On the table, it's like an altar.
So God forbade the use of metal to build the temple, to build the altar, which is a place of peace. So, and in our homes, our table is like an altar. It's to remind, our home is like the temple. Our challah is like the offering. Our table is like the altar. and therefore the knife, which is on the altar, should not be present when we're saying a prayer. So that's actually, I think, where we got it from. But the point over here is that the shamir worm was already created, was already made and saved for later. Okay, does anyone have any other relevant ones that they want to share? Okay, so twilight is Friday, is the evening time. It's like it's actually right around now is actually twilight. Sundown was at 8:14 today, and the stars are not yet out. So it's the in-between period where it's not yet, it's already past sundown, but it's not yet night. So it's actually the trickiest time of day. If a person is born during this time, it's confusing to know when their birthday should be celebrated, when their bar mitzvah is. It's just an interesting.
Frozen.
Oh, I'm sorry. The twilight time is just a confusing period to know if it's part of the previous day or part of the next. So God knows the exact time. So he was able to utilize, cut off again. Oh, sorry about that. God was able to utilize even the twilight period to create. All right, let's just go ahead. I guess the internet is telling us it wants to go further. It doesn't want me to. Let's read number 7. Let's see. My mother-in-law, Ma, would you like to read number 7? I have you next on my screen. I'm going to zoom in a little bit if that's okay with you. Perfect. Go for it.
There are 7 things a foolish person does, and 7 things a wise person does. A wise person, number 1, does not speak in front of someone who is greater than him in wisdom or in years of age. 2nd, does not interrupt his friend while he is speaking. 3rd, does not. 4th, asks questions that are relevant to the subject and replies to the point. 5, speaks in an orderly and systematic manner, dealing with matters of first priority first, and the last important matters last. 6, says, I have not heard, when people ask him about things he has not heard. 7, and acknowledges the truth when he is wrong and does not continue to justify his previous opinion. A foolish person does the opposite of all these things.
Awesome. I like all of them. Oh, wow. Even if I practice one of them, I would be in good shape. Let's see. They're all so important, not to interrupt, to be patient and not to rush to answer, to own up and say I made a mistake, to say I don't know instead of trying to make something else up. Awesome. These are all beautiful. Thank you. Does anyone have anything they would like to share on Mishnah 7?
These are as relevant today as when they were first penned.
Yeah.
I mean, they're so meaningful and so important.
That's well said. Thank you, Joey. I agree.
I think they relate to what we were talking about last week about our being able to control or subdue our inclination.
Uh-huh. Right.
It's easy to do all these things. I mean, to do what we're not supposed to do.
Right. Well said. Yeah, thank you. I'm curious to see what that footnote 3 would say, because it's such a nice Mishnah. Let's see, my mother-in-law, you're still unmuted. Ma, you want to read that footnote 3? Are you able to read it, or should I?
Yes. A person can gain a new or deeper understanding of something every time he hears it. Therefore, even if you have already heard an idea, you may say that you haven't heard it yet in order to gain a new insight or perspective.
Wow, that's beautiful. So even if you heard it, you could learn something new in it. That's from the Rebbe Maharash, which was the 4th Chabad Rebbe. And he died in he was the youngest Rebbe to die, actually. He died in the 1880s, 1883. Beautiful, thank you. I'm going to skip a little bit, if that's okay with everyone, just because we're not going to get through the Mishnah. Let's see, number 10. We went from 10 to 7s. 7 things this one does, 7 things that one does. Now we're going to go to 4s. Let's see Mishnah number 10. I have, let me just scroll down. Adrian, I have you next on my screen. Would you like to read?
Sure. There are 4 types among people. 1, someone who says there should not be any private ownership. My property is yours and your property is mine, is an ignorant person. 2, someone who says my property is mine and your property is yours. This is a normal character. Some say that it is the character of the city of Sodom, where it was a crime to share things or give to charity. 3, someone who says my property is yours and your property is also yours is a Hasid, devoted person, because he goes beyond what the law requires by giving and not expecting anything in return. 4, someone who says your property is mine and my property is mine is wicked because he wants everything for himself without giving anything in return.
Awesome. Thank you. And Adrian, once you have the mic, let's see number 3. Do you mind reading? Was it number 3? The chassid?
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Speech is as important as action when it comes to giving charity. Even a person who has nothing to give to the poor but comforts them with words by saying what's mine is yours is considered a Hasid, devoted person. On the other hand, one who gives charity but embarrasses the recipient by saying what's yours is mine is considered wicked.
Interesting. So you could be even in the form of giving, but it could still be a chassid or a rasha depending on their
Attitude.
attitude of it. Exactly. Thank you. Awesome. Okay. Let's see, talking about attitude, let's see the 4 temperaments. That's number 11, Mishnah 11.
And I just say, I don't understand.
Yeah, let me scroll.
Let's go back
Yeah.
to why he's ignorant.
Oh,
The
so
first one.
Should not be any private ownership. My property is yours and your property is mine.
I mean, why ignorant?
That's a good question. You're saying that's their normal thing. I have what's mine, you have what's yours.
Right.
Let's see. Let me crack open the books.
Socialism.
Jolie,
Did you see anything in your book about it?
I think I should call you. What do you think? You look and ask.
He's mixed up. My property is yours and your property is mine. He just is confused.
Yeah, he's just confused. That's because the way it's written in my book is a little more straightforward. There are 4 types of people. One who says mine is yours and yours is mine is an ignoramus. So because you have to say that mine is yours, like if I had an orange, my orange belongs to you and your orange belongs to me.
Yeah.
There's no purpose to it. It's kind of crazy.
Okay.
Isn't it because everything belongs to Hashem though? Isn't it maybe from that perspective?
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, because what it says is there should not be any private ownership. So I don't think he's confused about whose is whose. It's
Mine is mine and
a
yours is
theory
yours.
of economics.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
Well, I'd
ultimately, we don't truly own anything. I mean, ultimately, it's we're just passing through, right? So I don't know.
So
From
I
that
think
perspective.
you're right, Ma. I see a lot of the commentators here to address your thing. I'm just going to read one from the Knesset Yisrael, and let's see if it resonates. Mine is mine and yours is yours. One who only acts selfishly is average. One who turns selfishness into a philosophy and encourages others to be selfish, meaning he's not only saying mine is mine, that's his own thing, but he's saying yours is yours, meaning everyone should practice this selfishness. Don't give away charity. Keep it to yourself. It's mine, it's mine. It's yours, it's yours. He encourages others to be selfish as well, displays the characteristic of Saddam, of the city where giving charity was a punishable crime. So it's turning your selfishness, not yours, turning a person's selfishness into a philosophy. That's where it gets to be something that is an ignorant person. Does that answer?
Yes.
I like that. Thank you for addressing that, because yeah, it definitely on its own, it doesn't seem like anything wrong. It just seems normal. But I guess turning it into philosophy would add a lot. Oh, and I'm sorry, Debbie, I see I missed a question of yours before. I'm just reading it. Orthodox pregnant woman obviously keeps kosher. So how could she have cravings for something unkosher if she's never had it? It's a great question. I'll just,
This is a
I
very
was
good
never pregnant, so I can't really answer what a woman's craving is like, but I could tell you that women have very weird cravings, like ice cream with pickles. Never sounded good to me, and still never sounds good, but it's a craving. So, and I once had to wake up in the middle of the night and get it for my wife, and it was Shabbos, so we had to knock on doors to try to find hot peppers and what you want.
No, I understand that. And it was kind of just tongue in cheek, but
Oh yeah, okay, I see
it
that.
was
LOL.
kind of like from an hour ago. But what struck me was when you said that when a pregnant woman has cravings, even if it's unkosher, that you're supposed to get it for her. But again, kind of tongue in cheek, I was just kind of saying, well, how could she be craving something that's not kosher if she keeps kosher? She's never had anything that's unkosher. She couldn't be craving it.
I'll give you a little secret based on we have Shira and Thomas and Vivian are joining me in a Tanya class on Wednesday morning. It's a great journey. But one of the things we're realizing is it's not the end of the world. It's not danger. It's not bad. If you have cravings, you have to work on controlling yourself. But it's normal to have cravings. It's what you do with them. Meaning, for me to say that Big Mac looks delicious, it's not the biggest sin. The question is, could I control myself and say I'm not going to have it? So the craving itself, I mean, I could crave non-kosher. I could be Orthodox and keep kosher and see a good-looking ice cream and say, oh man, it's a hot day, I would love it, and crave it. The question is, am I going to act on it or not? So with the pregnant woman, it could be harmful if she's not given it, and therefore you give it. But we should be able to control ourselves. A pregnant woman, it could be because there's a baby inside. I don't know the exact techniques of how harmful it could be, but that's where it is. Meaning, I don't think the craving, we have to work on ourselves not even to have the cravings, but it's normal to have cravings. Does that make sense? That's just my psychology, the way I see it. But anyone else?
It's okay. Again, it was more just kind of tongue in cheek.
Tongue in cheek. All right. So I won't analyze it too much, but I do.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
So kosher is supposed to feed your soul, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So by having kosher food, for the pregnant woman to have kosher food, she feeds her fetus, her baby, soul food too.
Yeah.
But if she has something that's not kosher, that's not good for the baby.
You're right. That's a good point. But it's the best thing for the baby because it could be harmful if the baby doesn't get it. It's almost like if a person is sick and Yom Kippur, the doctor says they have to eat. Is it bad that they ate? No, it's actually good that they ate. Like, it's the right thing that they're eating on Yom Kippur. So it's the right thing for her to be having the non-kosher on. If she's having a craving, it could be harmful.
Okay, but pickles and ice cream or hot peppers and ice cream is not crucial for the life of a human being.
No, but that's not.
Right? I mean,
Well, if you're a pregnant woman, it's crucial.
Yeah, I don't know. Like,
emotionally.
I mean, I actually don't know. I know the Torah takes the cravings of a pregnant woman seriously.
Yes.
And like even in biblical Torah, I'm talking about in Torah times, the manna which we quoted before, created on Friday afternoon, and it fed the Jewish people for 40 years. It's one of the coolest laws of manna in the Torah portion of Baalotcha. We're going to get to it in the book of Numbers in a few weeks. It says that it was able to taste like anything besides for the 6 or 5 items that could be harmful for a pregnant woman. Because she could see everyone else tasting it, and it could taste like fish, and it could taste like onions and garlic, and those things were harmful for a pregnant woman, and therefore no one was able to taste it. So there was a sensitivity to the cravings of a pregnant woman, and it's something very sensitive, it seems like, in the Torah. So yeah, I can't speak to the science of it, like what the cravings are like, but maybe in the olden days it was worse. I don't know.
Maybe they also represented some kind of a nutritional deficiency if you really crave something.
Yeah. So, there's a lot to talk about on it. Let's read Mishnah 11 now. Adrian, you just read, right?
Correct.
So I don't see none of the burgers there. Vivian, are you around?
I'm here.
Awesome. I'm so
Okay,
excited.
ready?
Join our class. Could I have you read a Mishnah 11? But I'm going to do something a little different. Could I have you read the footnote 4 at the bottom first? It seems like it's an intro to the Mishnah.
All right. The Mishnah discusses 4 types of temperaments, not 4 types of conduct. While we are certainly responsible to control our actions, This Mishnah is adding that we must also work on improving our natural tendencies and habits.
Awesome.
The
All right.
Rebbe.
We're going to have a workout over here. Go for it. Thank you, Vivian.
Okay, there are 4 types of temperaments. 1, someone who is easily angered and easily calmed. His gain outweighs his loss because his anger passes quickly. 2, someone who is hard to anger and hard to calm. His loss outweighs his gain because he will remain angry. 3, someone who is hard to anger and easily calmed is a hasid, devoted person. 4, someone who is easily angered and hard to calm is a wicked person.
Right, because it's easy to anger and it's very hard to calm him down. So that's a pretty bad trait to have, a bad temperament. But it seems like what's from the Rebbe said in that footnote, that it's something we have to work on. It's not like this is who you are and you're stuck with it. It's something that
It's
we
good.
have to work on ourselves to improve. Okay, thank you, Vivian. Oh, I see David, you're back. Thank you, David. I'm sorry for skipping over you before. I didn't see you on your video. Are you able to read Mishnah 12? Unless someone has a commentary on Mishnah 11.
I'll read Mishnah 12.
Okay, go for it.
There are 4 types of students. 1, someone who is quick to understand and quick to forget. His loss outweighs his gain because he will remain with nothing. 2, someone who is slow to understand and slow to forget. His gain outweighs his loss because he will eventually have much knowledge. 3, someone who is quick to understand and slow to forget. This person received a good portion from God. 4, someone who is slow to understand and quick to forget. This person received a bad portion.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'll just read the Rebbe's commentary. Going through the 4, there's something beautiful here that we quote from the Rebbe. Like, what's the point? It's just telling us science. This is a good student. This is a weak student. Like, he's quick to understand. He's quick to forget. Like, what's the point? So the Rebbe just has the first student, which is Mishnah 1, the first one over here, where someone who's quick to understand and quick to forget, his loss outweighs his gain. What the lesson is over there, the Rebbe is saying that the Mishnah is encouraging this student to review his studies and not be satisfied with this quick grasp, meaning there's some sharp students that they get it right away, but you don't want to be quick to forget. If you work on yourselves by reviewing it, you won't forget it. It'll stick with you. And we all know that when you read something once, you read it and you move on. When you review it and you study it, it sticks. Actually, the Talmud, every page of the Talmud, I don't have a Talmud in this room, but every page of the Talmud has the exact same setup. It's set with the commentary is taking up the first 4 lines, and then the Talmud in the middle section beneath those 4 lines. That's where the wording of the Talmud starts. So Rashi, which is one of the commentaries, and his grandchildren, Tosafot, they take up the first 4 lines. And one of the reasons is every page you need a reminder that you need to review it all 4 times. That you can't expect to read it once and you could understand it, but it's not going to stick with you unless you review it. So the first student here is being reminded that you could be quick to get it, but you're also going to be quick to forget it. And therefore, you must keep on reviewing. The second one, it's almost an encouragement of the Mishnah that even though you're slow to understand it, but if you have the power that you're slow to forget it, you have a great gain over here, because you'll even though it's taking you time and it's slow, but you'll have a great, and he may feel disheartened, but take advantage of the fact and realize, and you should be enthusiastic on realizing that you have the advantage that it'll stay with you. And just one more I want to mention. Number 3, this could lead to an arrogant person. He's quick to understand. He's slow to forget. He feels good about himself, pats himself on the back. So the detail over here is this person receives a good portion from God. You have to remember that you shouldn't be too proud of yourself. It's a gift that you were given by God, and you should be humbled by it and not be arrogant in the face of this incredible gift. Okay, actually, probably if you're going to rate the 4 Mishnah, all the Mishnahs, my favorite one is probably Mishnah 13. 4 types of charity givers. Let's see who I have. Peter. Oh, unless Naomi, are you there with David? Okay, perfect. Yeah. Naomi, I'm sorry, go ahead.
There are 4 types, excuse me, There are 4 types of people who give charity. Someone who wants to give charity but does not want others to give. Such a person wishes bad for others because he does not want them to fulfill the commandment of giving charity. Someone who wants others to give charity but himself does not want to give. Such a person wishes bad for himself because he will not fulfill the commandment of giving charity. 3, someone who wants to give charity and wants others to give is a hasid, devoted person. 4, someone who does not want to give charity and does not want others to give is a wicked person. Is there more, David?
No, I think that's the end of the Mishnah. Thank you. So the chassid is someone who gives charity, but he also encourages other people to be part of the mitzvah. He's so excited about it. He wants other people to not to get more credit for him. He just wants other people the opportunity of doing a mitzvah. It's a beautiful one. Okay, we'll try to squeeze in just a few more because I really am enjoying a lot of these lessons. Let's read. Peter, I don't know if your audio is working. Are you there, Peter?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly. I'm so excited, Peter. Yes, this is 2 for 2 that we have the audio working.
Hi, Peter.
All right, so Peter, are you able to see the screen?
I'm sorry?
Are you able to see the screen?
Yes, I am.
Oh, awesome. Okay, great. So I'm just going to zoom in.
14.
This is Mishnah 14. Go for it.
There are 4 types of people who go to the house of study. 1, someone who goes to the house of study but does not learn. He still gets a reward for going. 2, someone who does learn Torah at home but does not go to the house of study. He gets a reward for the learning he did. 3, someone who goes to the house of study and does learn is a hasid, a devoted person. 4, someone who does not go to the house of study and does not learn at home is a wicked person.
Mm-hmm.
Rabbi, what about somebody who goes to a Zoom meeting?
Someone who what?
Someone who goes to a Zoom meeting.
Oh,
So if he goes, so what's the reward? Let's just analyze, let's say number 1. What's the reward for just going? He's not doing anything there. He's schmoozing and he's enjoying a good chalent. But he's not learning. He's not praying. So he still gets a reward. He gets a reward for going. It's a beautiful thing. Even if a person doesn't know what's going on there, he's trying to learn, trying to be inspired. It's not working exactly. He should know that he's already getting reward just for putting in the effort and for taking the steps to get there.
Our intensive life is showing up.
Yeah.
Yeah, well
He's not going somewhere else. He's not goofing around. He's not, going to the dance hall.
It's like going to a minion.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. There's stories of the Talmud where, people would travel to a faraway synagogue when they had synagogues right next to them and house of studies right next to them. And the reason why they went to the farther one is not because they got in a fight in the closer one. It's more because they wanted the reward of going to a farther place. So every Shabbos, not now, but usually when we walk to shul, we actually do it with enthusiasm, knowing that we're getting a reward just for every step that we take. And I only walk 2.3 miles. The Brahms on our screen walk 3.6, something like that. So I don't know if they still feel that same enthusiasm because they walk another mile.
It's 7.2 round trip.
6.2?
7.2 round trip.
My goodness. Okay, we'll wrap up with one more. This is 4 types of students.
You know what that reminds me of, Rabbi?
Yeah, please.
God's Fitbit.
What?
That's good. God's Fitbit. Fitbit is what keeps track of our steps.
Oh.
That's great. Okay, let's finish with one more. Although there's, we may squeeze in 2 more. I think everyone on the screen read, so I'm just going to read. This is such a beautiful, but it talks about the different types of love that there are in the world. It's like a friendship. Any love that depends on a specific thing will cease when that thing ceases. If I'm loving a person because of their beauty or because of money or because of whatever other reason that they have, it's not going to be a real love. And any love that does not depend on any specific thing will never cease. What is an example of a love that depended on a specific thing? This is the love between Amnon and Tamar. Amnon fell in love with the beauty of Tamar. It was not a real love. Amnon loved Tamar for her beauty. What is an example of a love that did not depend on any specific thing? This is the most incredible friendship of the entire Old Testament, the entire scripture, the entire Tanakh. It's this, the love between King David and his close friend Jonathan, or Jonathan. Jonathan encouraged David to be king, even though that prevented Jonathan from being king, because he loved David. Jonathan was the son of Saul. He was deserving of being the next king, but he knew that David was the fit one for it. And he encouraged David, you're the king. You have it. He saved David from the wrath of his father who wanted to kill him. And his father, Saul, told Jonathan, what are you doing? He's going to be the one trying to get king instead of you. But Jonathan just knew it was right. He was his friend. It's an incredible thing. It's exciting to talk about, because to have a real friend that is not based on any reason and motive of why they're a friend, if you have that friend, you keep them very close because they're hard to come by and they're incredibly special. So I just needed to make sure I read that one. Over here it talks about different types of arguments, if it's a heavenly argument or not. You may want to close your eyes just as I'm scrolling through. I just wanted to get to one more. Okay, we're just going to read 19. Whoever has the following three traits behaves as a student of Abraham, our forefather. He behaves in the Jewish way. Whoever has these three other traits behaves as a student of the wicked Bilam. Bilam was the evil soothsayer, I think is the proper seer or soothsayer. I think that's a proper word for them. He actually, our famous prayer, Matovu Olecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Israel, comes from Bilam. But anyway, what's the difference between their traits? The students of Abraham, our forefather, have a good and generous eye. They are not jealous and are happy for another's success. And finally, a humble spirit and a modest soul. They avoid unnecessary luxuries. The students of the wicked Bilam have a bad and unsatisfied eye. They are jealous of others and are not satisfied with what they have, an arrogant spirit and a greedy soul. Wow. All right, we're going to have to end the class soon. I'm sorry, I have to squeeze in Mishnah 20. This Mishnah is quoted as the opening of the Code of Jewish Law. The Code of Jewish Law, Shulchan Aruch, where it lists out how to be a Jew. The opening law starts with this law. Yehuda ben Tema says, be as bold as a leopard, and don't be intimidated by people who make fun of doing the right thing. We've all been in that place where you want to do the right thing, but you have a lot of social pressure, and they're going to make fun of you for doing the right thing, for speaking up, for wearing a yarmulke, for eating kosher, for wanting to stay home from the movies on Shabbos, or for sticking up for a person who's being bullied. Don't be intimidated. You have to be bold like a leopard. Be as light as an eagle, and don't let laziness win over you. Such beautiful things. Run like a deer, showing your great enthusiasm, and be as strong as a lion to overcome any obstacles, to fulfill the will of your Father in heaven. It's an incredible Mishnah. The Code of Jewish Law starts with it, and it analyzes each of them. Be bold as a leopard, not to be allowed people to scoff at you and get influenced by it. It goes through all of them. And last one. Ben Bagbak says, delve into the Torah and delve into it again. Always try to uncover more and understand deeper. Jolie, I think this would resonate a lot with you. I think this really, it's really something I appreciate so much in how you learn. You're always looking to go deeper, and you're always rereading it and understanding it with a deeper eye. And the reason is because everything is in it. I need to educate this to my children, because if I teach them this, they have it all. To realize that in Torah, you'll have the lesson for everything you need in life. You'll have the wisdom of everything. You'll find it in Torah. You just have to uncover it. And there's no one that's going to do it for you. It's something you have to do on your own, and obviously with friends and support, but it's something that you need to uncover and find the clarity in it. With Torah, you will see the truth. Learn Torah forever, even as you grow old and worn out. Never move away from it because it connects you to God. And you have nothing better than that. And Ben Hey says, just one, let me just finish it and then I'll tell you an interesting thing. The reward of a commandment is increased in proportion to the amount of strain and hard work you experience when fulfilling it. We know that for sure. Anything you do and you worked hard to do it, you appreciate it so much more. You feel the enjoyment in it so much. So any mitzvah that comes with extra effort, know that that's going to be the most meaningful mitzvah in it. Just interesting, Ben Bagbag and Ben Hey, those are pretty funny names. I don't know anyone that have those names. I don't think those names got passed on, but they should be because these are incredible lessons. You could see the love of Torah that's coming from these two people. Delve into Torah, uncover it. It's in there. Grow old with it. Never move away from Torah. The reward, when it's struggle to attain it and you get it, it's so rewarding. These two people, I just want you to know, they were both converts. And it's such an incredible teaching that you have from these two members of our people. And I don't think anyone could have said it better. And someone could have appreciated it more than someone that was on the outside and came in to appreciate it. The love of Torah, the enjoyment in a mitzvah as this. All right, we'll end with that one. And that's on a serious note. Like I know I've been saying that for a while already. But that concludes our 5th chapter of Pirkei Avot. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you, everyone, for your commentaries, your clarity through it. And thank you for bearing with my rough internet. And I'll, God willing, see you very soon. And if not very soon, at least next Thursday night for Pirkei Avot. But tomorrow we have tomorrow we have a Chaim and a pre-Shabbat celebration at 7. On Sunday, we have some exciting things. I'm going to put out an email. On Sunday morning, there's going to be an hour prayer with the former chief rabbi of Israel and some really great speakers to inspire us, some cantors. We're going to be joining with communities across the world, literally tens of thousands of Jewish people to gather together on Sunday morning to pray. On Sunday evening, we have trivia with Henry Rachelson. Monday, we're starting a prayer class. Tuesday, Adina has her Torah and tea. And the very much popular candid discussion that Adina and I will be having. I've got to many questions of people that are already here on the class and many other questions. We're going to be discussing honest discussion on Unorthodox, which is a Netflix series that has been pretty popular in the Netflix world. I don't know, what do they call in Hollywood? I don't know. It's been popular somewhere. So we've been getting a lot of questions. And we don't have all the answers, but let's at least discuss it. So we'll do that Tuesday evening at 7:30 next week. All right, everyone. Shalom. Thank you all for joining.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Rabbi.
Shabbat shalom.
Hope to see you again in person very soon.
Shalom.
Erev Tov.
Keeping you busy.